Hello everyone, Marco Montemagno here, the Tech Alchemist, and here with me today, Jason Cohen, co-founder and CEO of WPengine. Hi Jason, how are you going?
Hey, thanks for having me.
All right, Jason. So the reason why I wanted you in my show is that first I'm a customer, a WP Engine customer, and this is is always embarrassing on one side, but very good because you talk exactly of something that you try and test every day. So and the topic generally is a very interesting topic. I have tons of people asking for tips and advices about WordPress and where to host WordPress, security, and all the problems around. And in my experience, who better than you could help us understand more? Could you imagine if I was a totally unhappy customer and this was, a trap to talk bad about WPHA? It would be genius. I mean, it would be amazing. But no, I think the main problem here for me, I mean, I'm running digital stuff for, I don't know, 15 years, and for the last 10 years doing stuff on WordPress. But the big pain that I think WP Engine came to solve, or WP Engine alike companies, I mean, is to give a managed hosting where I don't have to be to think about upgrade security and all this kind of stuff. And so I think this is a good asset. But can you first explain in your words what WP Engine does and why you different from any other hosting companies?
Sure, well, we host WordPress, which means if you have a WordPress blog, of course, if a browser goes to your site, it has to go somewhere. And so we run the servers that browser is in fact connecting to. What makes us different is, number one, we're more expensive than things like DreamHost and Bluehost, so it does cost more. Yeah, and then, so what do you get for that? So first of all, the blogs go a lot faster. On average, our customers see a 4 times speed improvement. Second, it scales under traffic, so if you get some nice press, your blog won't go down. Number three, we handle security, and in fact, if you are ever hacked, we'll fix it for free as part of our normal tech support. And the fourth and probably most interesting one is that we have more tech support members who know WordPress on staff than anyone else per 1,000 customers, which means we actually have the time and human beings to help you with WordPress specific questions, even down to things like which plugin should I use for this and that sort of thing. So our service, by investing in human beings for service, our service indeed can be both really responsive but also deep. We have the time to get on the phone with you if you want and that sort of thing. So you get your money's worth.
Automatic, the company founding WordPress, did they invest also in WP Engine, or I'm wrong?
No, they did. In our last year when we raised some money, Automatic, yeah, was an investor in that round. Which you have to be careful. Automatic works with lots of hosting companies, and you shouldn't read into that we're favored or read anything into any other hosting company as a result. That would be not true. But certainly, it's a vote of confidence in what we're doing, how we're doing it, whether it's something that they approve of or like or think that it's sort of correct for WordPress. I mean, obviously, it is a nod for that.
The speed promise that WP Engine was doing, I was very fascinating about. And also, checking around, I saw your fabulous T-shirt that was you got written, "My blog is 4x faster than your blog." So I thought this guy or is very arrogant, or he knows his stuff, So let's try to test. And the first question that I have for you is, how about speed? I mean, how can you promise and deliver, because then you do it, to make a WordPress website faster? Because people and businesses normally are used with tons of cache plugins or Cloudflare or this kind of services, cache, CDN, and this kind of stuff. So how can you handle this part of the hosting?
Sure. Well, there's many aspects to making a site fast or scalable or secure. In the same way that if you ask like how do you make a car fast, you would not. I mean, the engine's important, but obviously it's not the only thing. And spark plugs can be important, and the size of the engine's important, and the gas that you put in is important, and the oxygen mixture the carburetor's in is important, and so forth. Right? If you put a supercharger, important. So like that, it's not one thing. So it's everything from having superior hardware, having those hardware resources dedicated to your site and not shared with, say, 1,000 other blogs, and then having systems around your blog to cache pages and so on. So you mentioned Cloudflare. Cloudflare, for example, caches static content, meaning things like your images and CSS, but it does not cache your pages, like your home page or a particular other page or a post. And those are the things that are actually typically the slow thing and the thing that doesn't scale. The other stuff is usually not the problem. So although it does make it incrementally faster for that other stuff, it doesn't address the hard part, which is dynamic stuff. There's also the database. I mean, so in the same way, there are many, many pieces that go together. Sometimes it's just in plugins that we say you should not use because we know those plugins slow your site down, and we have alternatives for those. So there's many ways. But what's interesting, because again, I hate for this to turn into just an ad for WPengine, so maybe a story about speed that's maybe not as obvious, which is kind of fun. We had a customer move to us and instantly got a 20% increase in revenue because he got a 20% increase in page views. And he got that because people stopped bouncing off the site as much, or by 20%. Bouncing meaning the browser came to the site and then left. But here's the interesting part. Those statistics were not in Google Analytics. And this is why, and this is the neat part. And this is true of any website anywhere, so it's kind of fun. You know when you click a link in Google search results and there's a white page and it's spinning, and then you get tired of waiting and hit back, right? Obviously, you just bounced off the page. Obviously, that was a potential page view that did not happen, right? But here's what's interesting. Because the page didn't load, Google Analytics didn't load either, which means Google Analytics or any any tool that you might use won't know that that happened. That is a bounce rate that's invisible to tools, sort of by its nature. And when your page goes faster, you get those kinds of bounces less because the page does appear, so you do get it. And even if they do run right away, at least you know it, right? It's in a bounce rate you can see in your tools. And of course, in general, and this is sort of now, I think, common knowledge with all the studies that are out, but in general, people tend not to bounce off site as much when they're fast. But what's interesting is you can't measure how many people are doing that sort of by its nature. All you can do is make the site a lot faster and see. And so that's what happened exactly to this customer that I'm referring to. And so it's an interesting effect that sometimes these things are hard to quantify. So there's things people know, like faster sites get higher search rank position, or that in general people will stick around on sites that are more responsive. That sort of stands to reason as well. Besides the fact that there are studies, but there's even like little holes like that, which I think are also very interesting. And you ask, how can we guarantee what will happen? Well, we don't. All we know is there's some effect, and it is what it is, and it'll depend on the site and lots of things. And we don't. We just do many things to make the site fast, and those other things, more things than you're going to do by yourself, just because who has the time? And even if you're technical, it's interesting, but who has the time?
What's the best tip that you can give to a business owner that has to take a decision, and maybe it's not hosting on WPengine or
Right.
similar web services? What's the most important thing? Just go on those kind of plugin with cache, CDN, and so on, or any tip that you could give specifically?
Sure. Make sure you have a caching plugin like W3 Total Cache or WP Super Cache, something like that, because it'll cache the dynamic content, and that's the slowest part, number one. Number two, there are very inexpensive CDNs like Max CDN or Cloudflare, which is free. I highly recommend that you go use Cloudflare. It will cache a whole lot of stuff for you, and there's a lot of other controls, and their basic version is free. That also affords you some security, which is also very good, so no reason not to get Cloudflare. Number three, you can use something from Yahoo called Yahoo Smush It, and it's a free tool that will make your images smaller without making the quality less. We can go into why if you want to, but that's what it does. And it gives it back to you in a format that's very easy to then upload again to your website, so that that's permanent. And you only have to do that once every time you change your theme. So no reason not to do that. Again, it's free. Another thing you should do that's free is use a tool either like W3 Total Cache or a plugin like WP Minify. And these are plugins which take all of your style sheets and JavaScript, so that means the stuff ending in .css and stuff ending in JS, and they combine them into one. So one style sheet instead of 10, one JavaScript file instead of 4, and also it makes them smaller. And both of those actions, and I could go into detail if you want, but both of those things make your site download much faster, and that plugin, again, and W3 Total Cache plugin do that, and again, it's free. And so, no reason not to do it. So those are all free things you can do on any hosting provider that will make WordPress faster. And the final thing I'll say about that is there's a tool, online tool called WPengineTest.org, also free, where you can put in your blog URL or really any page and get a very detailed analysis on what's fast or slow. If you do that first and then do some of the things I just said, you'll literally see the difference. And also that tool will help, it can help point out other things that you may be able to do to increase speed.
Right. Few years ago, I've been launched a weblog network in Italy, and finally did, I don't know, 3.5 million unique visitors a month. And the funny thing is that one of the biggest problem, it was before the cloud, so one of the biggest problem was going down. So every time that there was a peak of traffic, everyone happy on one side, on the other side everyone very sad, because you have to pay for additional servers and so on. So now with cloud is different, but still a website going down is something often happening. By the way, I think also the right moment when I migrate my website on WPengine, the website went down, and I say, gosh, I just changed the provider, but it was just 10 minutes, something like that. So what can you suggest on this topic? Because I mean, do you think it is related with caching? If you cache good,
No.
then if the site goes down, you still have the cache in place, or
No.
is something else that you have to do?
Uptime in data centers is rough. There's literally no hosting provider that I know of, and no WordPress provider I know of, that has 100% uptime in the last 12 months. Not one. It's hard. And then, when Amazon has their big data center failure in Virginia, as they've had a couple of times in the last couple of years, all kinds of services that you use go down, right? And you say, wait a minute, I thought it was cloud, I thought it was high availability, I thought they had backups, I thought they were redundant in various ways, whatever. And yet all of these big players that invest countless dollars in infrastructure on things like Amazon and cloud and all that sort of stuff fail anyway. That's very unfortunately life in hosting, is that it's not perfect. And so now that doesn't mean you throw your hands up and say there's nothing we can do about anything. Not true, of course, there's many things. But one thing it does point out that's interesting is it's very, very expensive to get very high uptime. You can't, even multiple servers isn't enough, because if they're all in one data center, the data center can have problems. Like, for example, I don't know, a hurricane hitting the West Coast and taking out your data center that's on the West Coast, which happened to a couple of data centers, right? Like, this happens. So you have to have multiple data centers, and that's tricky because keeping your data synchronized between them is a project. It's hard enough that, again, a lot of those very tech-savvy companies that have one application they have to keep running are unable to do it, or there's trouble. And when you are able to do it, it's very, very expensive. It's, because you need multiple servers in one data center to survive single server issues, and then you need multiple data centers, so you need servers everywhere, all dedicated for you. You have to test that stuff. It's very complicated. And so, honestly, for almost anyone, it's not worth it. And it's a horrible thing to say, because you hate to say, like, tough, but the truth is that to pay for what's necessary to get that is not the right cost-benefit trade-off for most people. And so services like us, or indeed our competitors, any of us, we have a lot of measures in place for high availability. There are still going to be some events. Now, fortunately, we did not go down with that storm, even though we do have hundreds of servers in Newark. But we do have some high availability stuff, and so we did survive that. But there are other things that we, especially in our past when we were less sophisticated, a couple of years ago, where a data center failure did take us down for a little while. Now we're more sophisticated, but even so, I can still devise a plausible scenario where we're going to go down, right? Or there's lots of service providers. The other day, GoDaddy's DNS went down, sort of famously, and a ton of sites were down. Our phones rang off the hook. How come my site is down? Of course, we weren't down, but their DNS provider, GoDaddy, was down. And so So their site was down. So there's a chain of service providers actually that all have to be working for your site to go down. So failures anywhere in there will take your site down, and it happens. And so again, very expensive. In fact, too expensive for almost anyone to try to get to really try to design for 100% uptime.
And Jason, do you think this scenario will change sooner or later with the technology progresses around? I mean, because as you say, I totally agree. There are so many players in the chain that you can be great, but then the DNS go down, or DNS can be okay, and the hurricane is coming. So it's so difficult to get everything up. But do you think it will improve the situation, or will stay like this for forever and ever?
Oh, it definitely improves. It's already improved. So cloud does improve things because you can have a failure in a single piece of hardware and not go down because your thing can float over to another piece of hardware. And you could have built that 10 years ago and it would have been much, much more expensive. Now it still costs money, but it's much cheaper and so more accessible. And in the same way, all of this stuff will become easier, more accessible, and less expensive. At the end of the day, high availability means redundancy. Like, it means there's multiple things that know how to do this or are doing this at all times. That's what it means. So there's always some expense with having resources allocated for you in multiple places. Like, that's always going to be more expensive than not having those resources. But I think that the extra cost will come down, the difficulty of setting it up will come down. So I do believe that it'll be less expensive over time to do that. In fact, there's even an offering that we're working on right now that would provide something like that very thing, but in a way that's more affordable. And so we're going to try to do that. But even so, like in 10 years, it'll be a whole different story, just like cloud is. But cloud doesn't automatically mean you don't go down. That's certainly not true, as you can see by things going down.
Jason, security. This is another top hot topic, because on one side you worried about, yes, the website goes down. On the other side you worried about being attacked somehow. And the two fear are, okay, what can I do with my security? I don't know, my password, long password, this kind of stuff. And what does my provider do with security? Could you elaborate on that? Because I think there is a lot of confusion, when we talk about security and WordPress.
There is a lot of confusion with security in WordPress. I think it's accurate to say that almost none of the security vulnerabilities that people have, almost none of the hacks that happen are due to WordPress itself or the hosting provider. And I include all of my competitors in that. In other words, it's very, very rare for one of my competitors for a security vulnerability on their side to be the cause of the attacker succeeding. And the same thing is true of WordPress itself. That is, if you look at, there are of course third-party organizations whose job it is to track security problems and fixes. And if you look at WordPress and tracking that, you can see there's almost none. That is almost never the problem. And in fact, even the very, very few things that they find are usually things where an attacker actually wasn't successful in doing it. They found it themselves and patched it before anyone even found it. In short, WordPress is about as ironclad as you can have for any web application. And in general, the service providers, don't have problems. And again, you can always pull out, well, one time this happened with this one. Yes, one time. But people get hacked constantly all day long. So if there was one problem one time somewhere, like, that's obviously not really the main problem here.
The problem is the user in the end.
Well, sometimes it's the user, but remember, WordPress, you can install any theme and any plugin. Well, that means you can run any code. Well, all kinds of problems happen as soon as you say, I can run anything. Well, okay, guess what? Like that, then they're all potential security vulnerabilities. And as you say, of course, things like passwords and I mean, just like speed, there's a myriad of things about passwords that happen. Here's, I think, the biggest mistake that people have about security. They say, and we hear this every day, they say, I won't get hacked because I just run a little site where I sell lawn gnomes, and nobody wants to hack a site that sells lawn gnomes because who cares? And they're absolutely wrong. Those are exactly the sites that get hacked, but not because they care about lawn gnomes. It's that the hackers want to do something else, like send spam email or use your server to then do something else to yet another machine, but mask their identity because it comes from your machine. In other words, the hackers have some other aim, because you're right, they don't care about your site. They have some other aim. And they're going to they want to hack your site in order to do that other thing that they really want to do. And so they don't care who you are. They just want to hack you so that they can use you to do stuff, like a puppet. And so everyone's vulnerable, and people get scanned constantly for these things because hackers will literally write code that runs around the internet looking for sites where they can do this to, and they don't know either who you are. They don't care. So
do you agree, Jason, that to give a practical tip, I'm thinking about the most common way of hacking, maybe, get good passwords, changing passwords, limit login attempts. There is a plugin. By the way, I think now WPengine has got it by default, so that when someone tries to log in your WP admin dashboard after 3 login or whatever, that IP is blocked. Anything else that someone can do by itself?
Yeah. So the biggest, well, there's a few things. Again, I would use Cloudflare. They do have a layer of security. We have customers with Cloudflare that get hacked, but security is something where every little bit that you do does help. If you use Cloudflare, some number of attacks will be blocked. Not 100%, but whatever they are, it's a number. Who cares? It's free. Do it, right? Number 2, use the fewest number of plugins possible, and use themes and plugins which generally are well worn. Now, just because they're used a lot doesn't necessarily mean they're safe. There's been some famous examples of plugins like Adminer and a tool called Tim Thumb, which were vulnerable. However, the ones that are often used, when they're vulnerable, it's big news, and there's often a patch out quickly. In other words, you'll find out, and you'll be able to fix it. And ones that are not used, if they're vulnerable, you'll never know, right? And so using well-worn code and as little of it as possible, and same thing goes with themes that are used by a lot of people, same thing, that is maybe the number one thing you can do to be safe. I would suggest what you're talking about. It's something called Login Lockdown. That's a plugin. It's free. If it sees someone attempting to log in a number of times unsuccessfully, it locks them out for a little while. That prevents people who are trying to guess your username or password, so that's nice. Again, that's just one little thing, one little piece of your armor, right? But every bit counts. I would say, finally, on passwords, changing the password is probably not that important, because that assumes someone's getting your password and knowing it, and again, they're not targeting you that specifically, right? They're trolling around. So just having a really good password, like one that's long and has some punctuation and stuff in it, that's better. If you're really paranoid, use two-factor authentication. So for example, there's a free plugin from Google where, in order to log into your WordPress blog, you type in a password, but then Google sends a number to your cell phone, like it texts you, and then you type it in. That's something that, of course, a hacker, it would have to be pretty amazing to get. So that's that kind of thing you can use. One more little thing that's important: when you log into WordPress, it's insecure. That is, when you go to your login page, it's HTTP:// not HTTPS with a little key like you get when you go to your bank and so on. It's not secure. And so that means when you type your name and password, when you're in the coffee shop, everyone in the coffee shop who wants to just got your name and password. Now again, that's a hacker who's sort of sniffing around a little bit more than what I was describing earlier, but that absolutely happens. And so number 1, two-factor authentication fixes that. Number 2, use a hosting provider in which that is secure, like WordPress.com. We have that option. A couple of our competitors do too, though. That's not completely unique, but you are sending your password over completely unencrypted, unless that's not the case.
Super interesting. By the way, I'm a big fan of double OPT in authentication, Google authentication. I've been using for a while. I'm super happy with that. I didn't know that there was a plugin for WordPress, so I will install it. When we finish, I will just install it right now.
Right.
And how about FTP uh, hacking for security is something to be worried about or not?
Again, strong passwords.
Can you imagine that when I launched my Weblogs network, I've been choosing movable type because the WordPress community was not there yet. And I thought,
Right.
well, it's not so much, you know. And if I think now, wow, it's so many things. So, how about themes and design? Because with such a large choice, a lot of time people, you know, start to change design and theme and then use a framework and then use another thing. So it's a very chaotic situation. Do you have any guidelines for themes and design to do a good job?
I not really in that there are a lot of really good players with quality themes that have support behind it. As you say, frameworks with child themes. I would say if you're developing a single blog, you can there you have a large range of choices for what to pick, and so you should pick the thing where you know other people who have experience there, so you have people to ask questions of is probably the best thing because there's lots of good choices. If you're a designer and you're making lots of WordPress blogs and this is your career, then you could learn a lot of different themes, but that's maybe not a best use of your time because as the designer of the blog, you get to pick more or less what the theme framework is, and so it's probably best that you specialize in a couple or even one theme framework and go super deep in that framework, so you become really competent in in delivering sites quickly, especially for the for the more simple or common stuff, and also a facility for yourself of more complicated features. And so, some of these frameworks like Woo with Canvas or Genesis and Thesis and all these things, they are a whole thing unto themselves. You could almost think of them as applications or products in themselves. They have tons of hooks, right? They have their own way of doing things. You make child themes, and there are plugins that work with them. I mean, it's a whole ecosystem within itself, right? Each one of them is a little one, and so I think it makes sense to specialize in one or two of those and say a couple of these have very large followings with lots of design and stuff behind them, and learning that probably allows you to generate websites faster and deeper. And so rather than just pulling random themes off the shelf and sort of having to get inside that theme author's head every time, it's probably best to specialize if that's your career.
I've been using Genesis and Thesis, and I'm a big fan of framework because I think there is, yeah, as you say, more stability, more support, and so on. What will happen in the next year for WordPress? I've been recently watched Matt talking, the founder of WordPress, talking about how amazing WordPress is going to be more and more. What are you expecting? I mean, what will happen from a technical point of view in 1 year? Big changing, more or less, will be the same? Is any particular thing that you think will be a game changer for WordPress?
Well, I think you'd have to ask the people at Automatic who are literally making those decisions. Some trends that we're seeing is number one, WordPress is getting some sort of you could say software process maturity. That is, there are things like unit tests and documentation and things like that, which in the regular software development world, back into Java and .NET and stuff, are part of what you might call a software maturity process, and that's sort of being backfilled into WordPress now, which I think is very good. Um, I think you'll see that being pushed into plugins and theme developers to participate in that. That will help with things like WordPress upgrades and stuff where, currently that can break lots of things or vice versa, and that's a whole thing. And with more process around that, especially with automated testing and continuous integration and stuff like that, hopefully you'll see improvements there. There's this goal of having WordPress automatically upgrade continuously like Chrome. I feel like that's a very, very good thing to do. Upgrades, on the one hand, we want upgrades, on the other hand, they are events every time for everyone. And again, as part of a tight process means you can start doing that as well. And I think that's a terrific goal that will help WordPress grow in whatever way it wants to grow more easily, because it can be more continuous development and deployment. And so in that sense, that will enable WordPress itself to proceed in whichever direction it wishes. I think you'll see more applications built on WordPress. So in the old days, WordPress was quote-unquote blogging software. Now WordPress is websites or CMS, right? It's just anything. And that we see the same thing. I would actually say the minority of our customers, I would say, is just their blog. It's the website, whatever that means, the company website or the marketing site and so on. So I think that will not only continue, but I think move into the application realm, where it's also a shopping cart. It's also got more dynamic functionality. It's and applications which are currently built on things like Ruby on Rails, more and more might be built on top of WordPress, because after all, it's got that CMS stuff built in, and so theming it is so much easier, and having non-technical people be able to edit text and behavior is so much easier, and so it's kind of a logical place for certain types of applications to go to. I think you'll see it moving into application. Another trend I think you'll see is more enterprise level features, some of which means things like performance and scale on certain internal stuff, which would matter if you have 100,000 posts or if you have 100,000 users, and wouldn't matter if you were smaller than that. So some of that's internal, and I think you might see some external features as well. But most of all of the stuff that I'm saying is speculation, because of course Automatic and the Foundation sort of together are the ones that in fact drive that stuff, and so I'm going kind of off of what we're seeing, kind of off of what they've said, kind of off of what Matt said in the last State of the Word is what his goals were. So I think that they're more or less in line with what publicly is being stated as the direction of WordPress, and we'll see.
Excellent. Jason, thank you so much. Jason Cohen, WPengine co-founder and CEO. Jason, good luck for everything, and keep in touch.
Thanks for having me.